Hello, everyone. Alice here from KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about you want to get your novel traditionally published, get that shiny golden ticket from the publisher. How do you do that? Well, I can tell you, as someone who has been traditionally published, my novel Love of the Sea, published by Inksmith Publishing, I had to do the full rigmarole in order to make this be a book. So I can tell y'all the in-depth details on how do you make your manuscript into a book. First things first, one of the biggest things that I always tell writers that are looking to get their manuscript published, do your research. Do your research. I cannot stress that enough. Do not just go on Google and then select whatever is the first publishing link that comes up. Don't do that. Always make sure you are doing your research. You want to make sure that this publisher is somebody that, one, you want representing you and your novel. Two, you don't want to fall into the trap of scam vanity publishers. And three, you don't want to waste your time and the publisher's time by sending a mystery novel manuscript to a strictly sci-fi publisher. I know it sounds silly, but so many people do it without thinking about it. So, first things first, do your research. How do I do that? Go into Google. Go look up different publishers. Go look at books you have on your bookshelf that you enjoy. What are the names of those publishers? Look up your favorite authors. What publishers have published their books? Look as much as you can. Go into the writing community. Ask people who they've been published by and how they feel about that publisher. Do your research. Make sure that the publisher that you are looking to submit to is a good fit for your novel and for you as an author. Because remember, this publishing house is going to be representing you. That means that you're going to be, in a marketing and business sense, tied to them. If they're super shady or not professional, that's not somebody you really want to be tied with. So make sure that they're legit. Make sure that they are someone that you want representing you. Go to their website. Look at their submission guidelines. I cannot stress this enough. So many people think that once you find a publishing house that you want to submit to, you just find their contact information and just email away. Don't do that. It's going to end up in the delete bin every time. Always look at their submission guidelines and make sure to double and triple check before hitting that send button, because publishing companies use very strict submission guides in order to weed out the people that are not paying attention. So if you don't have the right font size, the right formatting, blah, 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 instant rejection. Doesn't matter if you're the next Stephen King or whatever, they don't care, because they are getting literally hundreds of submissions every day. Back in the day, before email and all this good social media stuff, they used to have what was called a slush pile. And what that meant is that they would get actual manila envelopes, those big brown envelopes with the letters, because here's another one that people don't realize. Do not submit your entire manuscript right off the bat. Don't do that. They don't want it. They're not going to sit there and read 300 pages only to realize that they aren't interested. Typically, most publishers are going to ask you for some sort of specific cover letter, and they're going to tell you what they want in it. And they're going to ask for either the first chapter or the first 5 or 10 pages of your novel. That's what they're going to ask for. Always read the submission guidelines to know what exactly they're going to ask for, and only send them that. Do not send them more. Do not send them extra. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Follow the directions. Because back in the old days, they would receive hundreds of these manila envelopes with what I just said, the 5 or 10 pages, and there would be a literal pile of them in the middle of this mailroom, a literal mountain of these envelopes. And they would have a huge pack of interns whose jobs were to go through those envelopes every day in that giant mountain. And they knew from just sight, seeing, is this the right font? Is this the right formatting? Is this the right font size? No? In the trash it goes. And in today's world, of course, that slush pile has been translated into an email inbox, but it's the same deal. They're going to just immediately look at it the first few lines, and if it doesn't meet their criteria, delete, instant rejection letter. Don't be in the instant rejection letter pile. Do yourself that favor, because honestly, it can take them months to get back to you, or most of the time, not even at all. No answer is an answer with publishing companies. Publishing companies move very slow. They have gotten faster now that we have things like email and social media and all that good stuff, but as a business, they still move dinosaur slow compared to other industries. So take that into account. It can take as long as a year to hear back from a publishing company only to find out that they rejected you. So make sure that you do your due diligence so that you're not wasting your time or their time with an instant rejection. Even if you go through all that, follow all the directions, send them your brightest and your best, they can still reject you. Again, they're getting hundreds of submissions every day. They can't back all those books in a year. They just can't. They'd go bankrupt. Again, this is a business. They are picking books based on what they think is going to sell, because at the end of the day, they have to make money. And as the author, you should be concerned about that too. You want your books to make money. Again, if you are self-publishing because you just want your book to be out there to share with people, totally valid, totally fine. If your priorities are not to make money, that's okay. That's perfectly valid. But understand that these are going to be the priorities of if you're looking to go the traditional publishing route. You automatically, once that manuscript is done, take off your artist hat, put on your business hat, because that's what this is. It's a business. You have to show them that you're marketable. You have to show them that you have readership. You have to show them that you're worth it. And even if they do reject you, that's not necessarily a reflection of you or your book. It could be just it landed on the wrong desk on the wrong day and whatever. There are so many famous authors out there that got rejected dozens of times, even hundreds of times before their book got published. So if you get a rejection, just try again. Just keep putting it out there. And that's why I always also tell people, make sure you're working on multiple works at the same time so that you're not just sitting there like waiting for that email to come in. Make sure you're working on whatever your next project is so that you can have that ready to go, because that process takes so long that by the time that your book becomes an actual book, your next book is probably already going to be done and you're already going to be looking to publish that one too. So it's a process that you want to make sure you just keep going, keep working, because if you just sit there, you're going to be sitting there for literally years. That's how long it takes. The next step is, okay, we finally get that coveted yes from the publisher. Now what do we do? Oftentimes, you have to go through multiple hoops. You have to get multiple yeses in order for your manuscript to finally become a book. So this process is typically, you send in the first submission, which is the cold submission, where you're just going on their website, finding out their submission guidelines, sending them that first chapter, first 10 pages, whatever they asked for, and then waiting. You get a yes. It's typically going to be what's known as a partial request, meaning they really liked what they saw and they want to see more, but they don't want to commit yet. So they ask you for a partial. That can be anything from 3 chapters to half the book. Whatever they specify, send it to them. Always be grateful, always be polite. Never, ever burn a bridge with a publisher, because the publishing industry is small, especially if you get rejected. Never send a nasty gram email to the publisher in response. Never do that. Oh my goodness. I've seen so many people crash and burn doing that. Don't do it, because publishers talk. You can absolutely get blackballed in the industry and then no one will publish you if you're immature and you send nasty grams to any publisher, or if you act snooty, or you just label yourself as difficult to work with. Nobody's going to want to work with you. So always be cordial, polite, grateful, all of those good things. So if the publisher asks you to do something, you do it, is basically the bottom line for the partial. Then with the partial, if they send you that next yes, it's most likely going to be what's called a full request. That means they finally want to read your entire 300-page Partridge in a Pear Tree novel. So then you can finally Send them your entire manuscript. This is basically the part where it's the most anxiety because the answer that comes after that is the yes or the no. And for me, anyway, personally, that's the no that can hurt the most is when you get that far and then they say thanks, but no thanks. And again, you can't take it personally because it has to do, again, with business. It's not personal. So even if you get rejected going the whole 9 yards, always be cordial and polite, especially at that point. If you get rejected, it's usually for a specific reason, and frequently they'll tell you what that reason is so that you can either fix it and submit it again, or you can fix it and send it elsewhere, or not fix it and send it elsewhere. Whatever your goals or desires are with that book, it's up to you. But they'll typically at that point tell you why they're rejecting it so that you can then take that feedback and do whatever you want with it. If you get to that coveted yes, you get the golden ticket, baby. You get that book contract. It's gonna be a book. That's the part where you need to make sure that you read over that book contract carefully. Make sure that you understand the terms of that contract because it is a real legal binding contract, and you need to make sure that you know what you're getting into. I have seen far too many writers get scammed because they think they're going through this traditional process, and it turns out they're actually signing with a scam vanity press. What is a scam vanity press? We'll talk about that later in another one of these series, but just to give you a gist, they're basically people that will ask you to pay them to publish your book. That is rule number one. Never pay someone to publish your book. You pay people to edit your book. You pay people to do layout art if you are self-publishing. That means, when you write a book, you know how there's these nice margins, the gutter, how it's arranged on the page? That's what layout artists do. They make sure that they take your Word document and make it into an actual book. That's what layout artists do, and they 100% deserve to be paid for what they do. But you never pay a publisher to publish your book. They pay you. Always remember that. So, how do they pay you? Well, that... Oh, Squishy's yelling at me, y'all. So, how do they pay you? Well, that'll be in the details of the contract, and that'll also depend on you as the author, whether this is your first book or this is your 50th book. All of that will determine how you are paid. If this is your first book or you're a relatively new author, meaning that you don't have a large reading, you don't have a big brand name for yourself, you are probably going to have a royalties only contract. What this means is they are not going to pay you any sum fee up front, meaning they're not going to hand over 5,000, 50K over to you for the book. The reason for this is because every book that a publishing company decides to take on is a gamble. They need to decide if it is worth investing in order to publish it. And yes, invest, because they are the ones who are paying the layout artist, the editors, the graphic designers for the covers, and the marketing team in order to make your book a success. All of that costs time and money. It is an investment, so they need to make sure you're worth it. If you're not a big name or it's your first book, they're not going to give you upfront money because they are already putting up the money by investing in you. You haven't earned the privilege of upfront money yet. Royalties only means that, let's say a book is $10 in the bookstore. That means you're only going to get a percentage of that $10 sale from each book. What that percentage is depends on how large the publishing house is, so what they can afford, as well as your status as an author. Again, are you a new author? Are you an unknown author? Or are you a big time whoop-de-doo brand name? All of that depends on what your rate is going to be. Rates of about 2 to 5% are basically standard for most authors, unless, again, you're like Stephen King or one of those big names. Expect somewhere between 2 and 5%. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but again, this is how the publishing company works, is that they have to pay all the upfront cost of making your book into a book and getting that book into the hands of readers, and then After all that cost, they have to split the profit between you and themselves. And keep in mind, for those of y'all that are like, well, I'm not getting very much money from that. What if I self-publish? Technically, you could potentially make more money self-publishing, but then that means all that work falls on you that normally the publisher would take care of, and all of the cost that comes with that. So keep that in mind when you're deciding between self-publishing and going through a traditional publisher. That means you don't have to rely on yourself for a lot of that. But a big mistake that I see a lot of newer writers make is they think that once the publisher is like, okay, it's a book, congratulations, that you as the author have done your job and you just sit back and wait for those sweet royalties to roll in. No, no, no. They are going to ask you about your marketing plan. This is normal. This is standard. It means that you need to be building your readership. It means that you need to be able to show them that you are worth investing in because you are also going to invest in yourself and help sell your book. Big part of that in today's world means making sure you have a strong following and strong engagement on your social media handles. It also means that you're going to be willing to go out and pound the pavement. This means going to conventions and events and being in person to sell your books, being in person to sign books, being in person to speak on panels. There's also a lot of great stuff in this digital age to be able to do that online as well, with virtual conventions, with interviews on Zoom, Twitch, YouTube, all those great platforms. There's just so much out there to be able to make things more accessible, as well as for you to better reach your audience. But you have to be willing to put that work in because your publisher is putting that work in and they expect you to as well. I hope this has been helpful. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comments. And again, I can only speak to what my personal experience has been, as well as the experience that I know from others that I personally know. So there may be questions that I might not know the answer to. I hope this has been helpful, y'all. Tune in next time for more questions and discussion. Thank y'all so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.